Lovelies, welcome back to the channel Style by C. Today's tutorial is inspired by this thing called faction. We'll be doing the drafting today, then the next tutorial will be on how to sew it. Do subscribe, watch, and share to friends. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up. So guys, the first thing for us to cut out is the skirt parts of our gown. Alright, so I'm going to be working with 46 inches long. Then I'm going to mark my half length, which is at 16 inches. So this is my waistline. Then the next stop is my hip line, which is at 9 inches. All right. So I'll mark my measurements here plus seam allowance. Then here I'll mark my waist measurements plus seam allowance. Then I'll connect the two. All right. Then I'll come to this bottom part and I'm going to go ahead and insert my hip measurements here. Plus half an inch. Then I'll connect it. Alright, so the bottom part you mark your hip measurement. So now we'll go ahead and cut this out. So I'll use this to cut out my back piece. The next thing we're cutting out is the sleeve. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and mark how long I want my sleeve to be. So looking at the picture, the sleeve is about 13 inches long. Okay, so you can decide to use less for yours, but at least the sleeve is getting to the fingertips, kind of. So I'm going ahead to mark my 13 inches. Then from there, I'm going to mark my cap height. Alright, so let me adjust this. So I've marked 13 inches. Then from here, I'm going to mark 4 inches for my cap height. Alright, now if you watch closely, we're going to have like an up shoulder. There is how the upper shoulder of this cloth is going to be. So I'm going to reduce it to 5 inches. Alright, then here now I'll insert my bust measurements plus seam allowance. Then I'm going to go ahead and make my curve. Okay. Now from this upper part of the sleeve, I'm going to go ahead and mark. We have 30 inches. I'm going to be removing about 23 inches. I'm going to mark, this is my 23 inches here. So I'm going to go ahead here and mark 23 inches. Alright, so here now I'm going to go, I insert my waist measurement that is here. So you insert what you have there plus your seam allowance. Alright, so from this point now you're going to connect to this point where you inserted your bust measurement. And this is what I have here. Having done this now, the next thing to do is from this point now I'm going to be making a curve towards this point. So let's say this down part of the sleeve is going to be like an A line kind of. Alright, so let's say we have about 10 inches. You can decide to add extra one to it depending on how full you want yours to be. Okay, so now I'm going to be covering it to that point. Alright, so I think at this point it's not that full the way I want it, so I'm going to add extra one and define my A-line shape. So now what you have to do is to go ahead and cut out this piece. first of all, I'm going to cut this out. And this is what I have. The first thing we're going to be marking is 2.5 inches above our pattern paper before we mark our shoulder line. All right, so this 2.5. Okay, so now the next thing to do is you're going to come to this 2.5 inches and insert your shoulder measurements. So now my shoulder measurement is 8 inches, but I'm going to be adding extra 1.5 to it. All right, to, or I can decide to just add 1 inch to it. Okay, so now having done that, the next thing to do is to mark 1 inch for my shoulder slope, which is here. Then from here now, I'll mark my armhole measurements. So my armhole measurements or chest line measurement, that is the depth is 7.5 inches. To get yours, divide your bust measurements by 6 plus 1.5 inches. The next thing I went ahead to mark is 3 inches, which is my shoulder width. So guys, at this chest line now, I'm going to go ahead and make a row across. Alright, so having done this now, the next thing to do is from here now, I'm going to mark my half length, which is at 16.5 inches. 16 inches actually, added extra half an inch. Alright, the next thing to mark is your bust points. Mine is at 10 inches. I'm going to go ahead and mark it. Then I'm going to make a V across. And this is what I have. Okay, so the next thing to do now is I'm going to go ahead and mark my shoulder measurements, which I'm using. So remember, our shoulder is 8 plus 1 inch, making it 9 inches. I'm going to go ahead and make a V this way. And this is what I have. Having done that now, I'm going to divide what I have here into 2. This is 7.5. When I divide it, I have about 3.75 inches, which is here. Just leave it that way. Then the next thing I'm going to mark on my bust point. So this is B, bust point. This is C, chest line, and this is H, half length. So coming to this point now, I'm going to go ahead and mark my nipple to nipple measurements. So mine is 4. I'll mark it on my bust line, 4 inches. All right, then coming to my half length, I'm going to remove half an inch from it. Since I have 4 inches here, my half length, I'm going to be having 3.5 inches, which is this way. All right, then I'll connect the two of them together using a rule. And this is what I have. Having done that now, coming to the half length now, I'm going to mark 1 inch from this dart line now, outward, to create my dart intake. Okay, then I'm going to connect it to my bust line. This is what I have. Okay, so this is actually a princess dart, but not the actual princess dart. That's not what I'm working with, but it's a princess dart format. All right, now I'm going to be connecting from the bust line to this half length, to this half of my armhole that I have here. So from here now, I'll connect to this point. This is what I have. All right, now I'm going to come down from this point to 1 inch to avoid shoulder bulge. Okay, and this is my 1 inch I came down to. Then I'll retrace my line. Sorry, not shoulder bulge, to avoid bulging at the armhole area. That is why I came down by 1 inch. So having come down by that 1 inch, what next to do is you're going to increase it by 1 inch again. So I'm going to make a slant from this point now. I'm going to go upwards to make a slant. Connect it back this way. Then I'm going to go ahead and retrace my armhole. And this is what I have. All right, so this part is going on. We're not working with this part. Having done that now, I'm going to go ahead and insert my bust measurements. So this way our bust measurement is, it doesn't really matter. Just go ahead to insert your bust measurement, insert your seam allowances. So I'm using 3 inches for this because of the joining. You can decide to work with 2 inches. So from here now, I'm going to insert my waist measurement, which is 7.25. I removed 1 inch here. I'm going to be adding it back plus stitching allowance, then my actual seam allowance. Having done that now, I'm going to connect the lines together, the waist and the bust measurement together. And this is what we have. Now we're going to... So guys, the next thing to do is now we're going to be cutting out our princess dart. So keep this aside. Then now we're going to be working with this. Alright guys, this is what it looks like. Alright, so now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come to this upper part, this area, and we're going to mark our neck width here on this extra 2.5 you have. Okay, so now the built up neckline, like the upper parts, you can decide to use 1.5 inches, you can decide to use 2.5, but I'm going to be working with 2 inches. Okay, I don't want it to be too choky, so I'm going to work with just 2 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and retrace it. All right, so having done this now, I'm going to go ahead here and mark my neck width. You can decide to work with 2.5 or 2.75 inches. So I'm marking 3 inches for my neck width, and this is what I have. Now note that we marked 1 inch for our shoulder slope earlier when we are drafting. So I'm going to be connecting from this point now to this point. So from my neck width to the actual shoulder slope, which is here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and use my curved rule to do this. And this is what we have. Then we're going to go ahead and cut this out. So having cut this out now, I'm going to go ahead and notch the center of this pattern paper, because I'm going to still work with it. Okay, then I'm going to open up my pattern paper, and this is what it is looking like. This is what it's giving me. Okay, so first thing first, we're going to be making an asymmetric V neckline. Okay, that is going to be towards this area. So now this is where our first shoulder lies. We're still going to be working with it. Okay, so from this point now, which is the first shoulder, you're going to determine how deep your neckline is going to be. That is the asymmetric V. How deep you want it to be. Do you want it to be at 5? Do you want it to be at 6? Depending on how deep you want yours to be. So mine, I want it to be at 6, which is here. Okay, so now I'm going to come to this neck area. I have 3 inches here, and I'm going to be coming in by, let's say, 1 inches to 0.75 inches, because one, we are going to be, let's say 1 inch, because you're going to be joining. When you take a stitch from this part, take a stitch from this part, you're going to be left with, let's say, about half an inch or 0.25 inches. So I'm also going to do the same thing to this other side. So I marked 1 inch on this side, 1 inch on this side. This is to enable me create my V. So now I'm going to be connecting from this point. Now I'm going to be connecting, let's assuming I want my V to be here. So from here now, I'm going to be making a connection to this point. Sorry, I've marked the wrong line. Please discard this first one. This one is wrong. And from here, I'm also going to be making a curve towards this point here. And this is what we're going to have. So if you want yours to be more deeper, please go ahead and do so. So I'll go ahead and cut this out. So this is what it looks like. All right, so you may be wondering, it's not that deep or it's not that wide. Please, you are free to make it more deeper. All right, so now we're going to be transferring this to. So guys, now we're going to be cutting out our back piece. All right, so I also went ahead to mark my 2.5 inches from the top before marking my shoulder line. Okay, the next thing I did was to mark 2 inches for my zip allowance. These 2 inches, I should have used 1.5 inches, but I used 2 inches should, in case the neck is too tight, I can adjust it at the zip area. All right, so at this point now, you go ahead and insert your shoulder measurements. Then you come down by 1 inch for your shoulder slope. From here, you mark your chest line. Alright, the next thing you have to mark is your half length. So you're not needing your underbust, your bust points for this. Just go ahead and mark your half length. So my half length is 16.5 inches. And this is what I have. Okay. So from here now, I'm going to divide this by 2 to get the midpoint. So this is my midpoint. Now I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurements. Alright, so we use 4 for the front. So we're also using 4 for here. So I'll mark it on my chest line, C, and I'll mark it on the half length, H. Connect the 2 of them together. Alright, then from here I'm going to connect to my armhole, which is here. That is half of the armhole, which is here. Alright, so having done this now, so you go ahead and continue with your process then. So for this back piece, I'm only going to be marking half an inch at this area. Alright, at my half length. And I'm connecting it to the chest line, which is like this. Alright, then I'll go ahead and mark my waist measurements plus my seam allowances. So having done this now, the next thing to do is I'm going to extend this line upwards. This is to avoid bulge, and I'm going to go ahead and retrace my armhole. Then we'll cut this out. So at this point, I think it's kind of excess, so I'm going to reduce it. There was more than 1 inch there, so I reduced it. So now we're going to work on this part properly. Okay, so remember we used 2 inches for our front piece. So the same thing we're going to do here. We're also going to mark our 2 inches. That is for the built-up neckline. We use 2 inches. So please work with your 2 inches. If you work with 2.5, work with your 2.5. If you work with 1.5, please work with it. Alright. So this is what I have. So at this point now, I'm going to go ahead and mark my neck width, which is 3 inches. Here. Then I'm going to be connecting it to my 1-inch shoulder slope from the original shoulder measurement. Then make a curve. Then you go ahead and cut this out.